very luckily, we found this boy. Never acted before in his life. And I saw an audition tape of him. And what was interesting about Elliot was his stillness. He was like a silent movie star. There was a stillness in him. And also at a certain point, he reflects you. You understand what he's thinking. So he becomes a mirror for you. And you're seeing it through a child's eyes. Well, again, you need someone to transport you back to your childhood. And Elliot had that.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a young boy and his mother search for each other amid the London Blitz, in director Steve McQueen's war drama, Blitz. The film tells the story of George, a 9-year-old boy who is separated from his mother, Rita, amidst the devastation of the London Blitz Capitol bombings. As George embarks on a journey to find the family he left behind, Rita embarks on her own journey to track down her son. In addition to Blitz, McQueen's other directorial credits include the feature films Hunger, Shame, and Widows, the miniseries Small Axe, the feature documentary Occupied City, and the documentary miniseries Uprising. He was nominated for the DGA Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Feature Film for his 2013 feature 12 Years a Slave. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, McQueen spoke with director Barry Jenkins about filming Blitz. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
So let's just get right into it. So Steve, this film is set in 1940 at the beginning of the war during the Blitz, and it's set in a very multicultural London. I think both those things are things that in the canon of war cinema around the subject, I don't think we've seen very often. In particular, such a multicultural lens on what this time in history felt like, what it was. Just talk to me about making Blitz, setting it at the time that you did, and setting it in the community and the world amongst the characters that you do.
Well, it started again. The initiator was a case of wanting to sort of look at the British identity. We in Britain, there's a lot put on the Blitz spirit. It's become this sort of national sort of, it becomes this badge of honor. And it's the basis of who we are in a way, Churchill, the finest hour, all that kind of stuff. And I want to look at that period in the sense of people make decisions about war and then people have to live with it. And I wasn't so interested in people in khakis, killing as many people as you could kill and therefore we win in somewhere in a field in France. I was interested in the people who have to deal with unfortunate situations of war. And in my research, again, I was a war artist in 2023. I was in Iraq, and being in war is a really kind of weird thing because, again, often majority of us are war is we see on television, we see, or we get it through the media one way, shape, form, or the other. So being on the ground in theatre, as they say, a very strange romantic word for war. It's kind of sobering. And it's the first time actually, Barry, I became nationalistic in a way because I was with the troops. I was with, people from all over the country with all different regional accents, from Edinburgh to Southampton to Newcastle to Swansea, Liverpool. It was beautiful having these guys and these people around me, complaining about their equipment and buying the stuff off the Americans. You guys have the best equipment. You do. I don't know if that's good or bad, but you guys have the best equipment. And I just had this sense of nationalism, and it was kind of perverse because it was at war. I was in a war zone, but I had the sense of a community. Bizarre. Anyway, what the question you're asking about is the diversity, the multiculturalism of London was something when I was researching about the Blitz after I came back from Iraq, because that's when I had the idea, was so there. It was so obvious. You did the shallow mining, Café de Paris. There were 3 black clubs off of Seven Dials in London, the Dominion Theatre's there. And then you get a situation where, there's a very large Chinese community. But in movies, you just never see that. And it was just so obvious. As my son was saying, I wasn't flexing. I was just sort of trying to portray the images of war as they would have been seen in central London. And it's never been put on screen before. So it's kind of, I never thought, that wasn't a case of trying to do something different. It was just telling the truth.
I love the way you approach just, not even mise en scène, but the information within the frame. And that information is usually like, it's electric, it's spiritual, it's emotional, it's intellectual. You just mentioned in this area that there was also a very large Chinese community. And I remember watching the film and I almost wanted to pause it. I couldn't. It was a DCP, so I couldn't pause it. But at the moment where Marcus is taken and everyone's standing in front of the club watching, and you cut to this gentleman of Asian descent, who's in central London, also witnessing this thing that takes place. And I thought that is such a rich detail, because to me, a Londoner in this period is someone who looks like Harris Dickinson, and not someone who looks like, like they're the cousin of my partner, Lulu Wang. It's just a really lovely detail. It just seems like you did tons of research to sort of really build out the sort of world of Blitz. I want to hear a little bit about that research before we start talking about the film itself.
Well, as I said, when I was sent to Iraq, I was sent by the Imperial War Museum. In the Imperial Museum, I have a great archive. So I was just working with the archive and the archivists, and as well as I was working with a guy called Joshua Levine, who wrote this book called Secret History of the Blitz. So that was that sort of depth. And, again, there was so many things to find in that. Again, the landscape, what was going on. I was so much interested in texture, how things were, how do they, with the, for example, with the sort of the firemen and how they got the water, where they got the water from, the equipment they use, which was totally futile in a way. I mean, it was like fighting a fire-breathing dragon with a water pistol. Those brave men doing that, the whole idea of this spitting serpent, this sort of, the brass nozzle and the hoses were basically canvas and they leaked. So when you find things out like this, then you could get into the minutiae. You could get into sort of how things were. That was exciting. The research was it just gave and gave and gave and gave.
Can I say it brings a very different texture to a war film? When I think of war films, typical war films, it's like, these were the good people and these were the bad people. I love that in this film, we don't really see the bad people. There's normally a boogeyman, but we don't really see the Nazis in this film. We don't really see the people who are dropping the bombs. Interesting choice right from the beginning. That was a choice. Okay. I will move on to my next question, people, because that was a very quick answer.
No. Again, the fire-breathing dragon was in my head. The fire-breathing dragon, this massive. I kept on thinking of that animation. Is it Peter and the dragon? He's fighting a fire-breathing dragon with a wooden sword. And I just thought, okay, we don't have to see them because they're dropping things from the sky. It's things I'm interested, because also even when they put the camera on the bombs, we're seeing the bombs. We're not seeing the target. We're seeing the bombs coming out of the planes. So those kind of deliberate choices again, it makes it much more about the people on the ground.
What's the word for the choices?
Sorry?
Deliberate, you said?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to underscore it. Deliberate. So the lead of the film is this young boy who I've never seen before. I imagine, his family has seen him, but not on a screen the size of this. Tell me about casting the character, the young man who plays George. I assume it was his first time performing?
Yeah, never acted before in his life. And he was just a delight. You did obviously cast and you throw the net broad and wide trying to find it, because after you finish writing, you think, okay, great. Is there George? Does he exist? Again, you can be ambitious with the script, but you got to fill it with the people. Very luckily, we found this boy. And I saw an audition tape of him. And what was interesting about Elliot was his stillness. He was like a silent movie star. There was a stillness in him. Those kind of faces where you do this and you think you know what they're thinking, then you don't, and then you do this, and then, and then you really want to know what they're thinking. Yeah, it's that photograph in your house. Everyone's got a photograph in the house, and it's this and this and this. That was him. He was a silent movie star. You want to know what he's, and also at a certain point, he reflects you. You understand what he's thinking, so he becomes a mirror for you. And you're seeing it through a child's eyes. Well, again, you need someone to transport you back to your childhood And Elliot had that stillness. It was just, wow, he's a star.
I typically, if there's a film coming out that I know I want to see because I love the filmmaker's work, I'm here because I love the filmmaker's work. I don't watch anything. I don't read anything. I love film criticism, but I only read reviews after I've seen a film. I just don't want to know anything. So I knew nothing of what the actual story of this movie was before I watched it. And I had no idea it was going to be told through a child's eyes. Just no idea. And it took a few moments in the film, Elliot, that face, he's sitting on the train opposite that young woman. And when he gets up, it's like, you want to fight? I was like, oh, it's his movie. Like he just took the movie. And it was so fascinating to reprogram how I was going to receive these images, how I was going to go through the movie. You knew from the beginning you want to tell this film, the story, through a child's eyes?
Yeah, when I saw that photograph, it would just hit me. It was just so beautiful in a way.
Can you describe the photograph?
Oh, forgive me. It's of a black child walking on a platform, but just about brought up to be ready to be evacuated with a suitcase and an overcoat and a cap. And he looked so beautiful, so cute, so wonderful. And I was like, who are you? And what is your story? And I wanted to know because he's just so innocent. Where are you going? And there were 800,000 children were evacuated, in 1.25 people in general. The parents didn't know where they were going. They didn't know how long they were going. They didn't know who they were being with. I mean, these are children from 3 till whatever who were evacuated. That you could never imagine that happening now.
There's something you do in the movie because you make the choice to tell the story through George's perspective. Mm-hmm. That as I'm watching the film, I realize I have this very, I grew up in a very difficult place, but you don't realize where you grow up is difficult if it's what you know. Mm. And so for a moment at the beginning of the film, the children, they're all sort of like, they're on this adventure. And George is on this. I think it gives him the courage to jump off the train. No spoiler. You guys just saw the film. He's on this adventure. But as he gets deeper into it, he starts to get a firmer grasp of what's happening around him. And I feel the film start to also get a firmer grasp. Okay, it's a fable, but now we're some of these things that are happening, I can't fableize them. I just want to talk about calibrating how you sort of like orchestrated the movie around George, around this child's point of view. I'm just curious. This is me just.
Sure. Well, for me, the movie, it starts a long time ago. It starts with, right at the beginning of the picture to sort of, again, to put the audience in a position of, again, the images of what you saw right at the beginning as a situation of out of control. But for me, there's the sort of the next starting point is George jumping off the train. Self-determination. His map has been laid out for him. His trajectory. This is what you're going to do. This is what you have to do. Now, you, Barry, and other people in this room have said no to the fact that you are going to be this and the other. Self-determination. It takes a lot of courage for that boy to make that decision, to jump off the train. He literally changes the narrative. The train it's a narrative. Train's going this way. He changes the narrative. And through that jump into the void, his adventure begins. He's not allowing someone to direct him in the way that they want him to go. I've done it. I had to do it. And it's bloody nerve-wracking because you don't necessarily know if you're going to land well. But guess what? I'll take my chances. And that boy, again, it's a boy. It's Hansel and Gretel. It's Brothers Grimm. It's Jack and the Beanstalk. Go to town and sell the cow. No, he gets the beans. Hansel and Gretel. And the grandma again. And this whole adventure starts. So it's a dark fairy tale in a way because it's seen through a child's eyes, and there's a certain sort of classical elements, of course, in the story, of course. But everything you see on screen has never been seen before in cinema. Never. Why? That's my question. That's not even my concern because I'm interested in you guys. I want to make a exciting, thrilling film but at the same time with images you haven't seen before. Not because, one isn't sort of, no. It's a case of, well, that was the landscape.
It's interesting. You're poking at something that it's only 30 minutes for these things. What should we get to talk about, or if we will get to talk about? But, we make these movies, we go on these trips. So with some of my other films, I got to go to London quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And, we share a publicist, and I would be on the plane, and the Financial Times would always be on the plane.
Paula Woods, who's actually quite
Paula Woods, who's amazing.
Right.
So I started, just to embarrass her, a round of applause for Paula Woods. Oh. I would have had a third of the success I've had without this woman, trust me.
Absolutely.
I'm flying a lot. I'm reading the Financial Times. I get it now once a week. I get the weekend edition, and they had this image of Charles de Gaulle the day after Paris was liberated and given back to the French. And the U.S. called him up and said, hey, we need a photo op. We need to get a photo of you walking down the streets of Paris, reclaiming the city. But there's one stipulation. We know at this point at the war, none of the battalions are 100% white. The battalions are almost exclusively only 40% white at this point because they've had to bring so many soldiers over from the places they've colonized. Our government calls and says, hey, when you take this photo, you can't have any black soldiers in the photo op. Yeah. And so in the Financial Times, there was this article because there's one gentleman who refused, and you see him on the periphery of this photo with Charles de Gaulle, and people are trying to pull him away. They flew in the one all-white battalion that was fighting, I believe, somewhere in Algeria or something, North Africa. Yeah. They flew them in just for this photo op. And you watch all these films set during World War II, and you never see that at that point in the war, so much of the fighting force was fully integrated. It had to be, because there just were not.
Enough people.
Exactly. And so when you say this, never seen, I'm like, I'm with you.
That was the article written by a friend of mine, Gary Young.
Yes.
And it's like,
But never seen, not haphazardly, never seen intentionally.
Paint us out of the picture.
Until someone like you comes along and tells this story. So there's a weight with that. How do you create, just create images and not deal with that weight?
Because it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating to see images you haven't seen before. Women in a musician's factory, 450 women in the musician's factory working on bombs, seeing how tactile it was to make a bomb. Black women as well, brushing it, and they were the backbone of the country, the physical and emotional backbone of the country. How is it possible that we have never seen women at war other than, forgive me, being a love interest, crying, or giving someone a cup of tea? They were the backbone of the war effort. These bombs came from somewhere. But yes, there's a perversity in those bombs because they're making those bombs in the factory at the same time, hiding from bombs falling on them. That's the perversity of war. What the hell are we doing? But that's one thing, Again, so the fact that I could work with Saoirse Ronan as this kind of hero and put her front and center and, again, and then there's a situation of her child. And then there's so many, there's Mickey Davis. How come no one knows who Mickey Davis is? Mickey Davis was, no one knows him in the UK. He should be a national hero. There's this small gentleman who's running this shelter. And there was an American journalist who came over who said, this is the first time I've ever seen democracy actually at work. He was one of the forerunners of the NHS. So this huge. So again, this is exciting, but also I'm not ticking boxes. I'm not interested. I'm interested in telling an amazing story about the Blitz. So George sees me. George didn't see Mickey, but his mother did. But it's just wonderful to weave these things. The Café de Paris. There's rations going on, but some people, I'm gonna get excited. Some people living the life of Riley, and it's within that club, and the band leader Snakehips Johnson, who based himself on Cab Calloway.
Someone said yes over here.
Yeah, he based himself on Cab Calloway. Openly gay man, live with this white guy. He's openly gay, and the fact of the matter is that it's the sexuality even in the Blitz was not. No one really cared who you slept with anyone at that point during the Blitz because people were worried about dying. So there was a sexual revolution going on as well as with the women. Quentin Chris, he told you part of the story, but the truth is it was you can imagine it was very interesting at that time when you think you might possibly die, anything goes, but also because of that. Excuse me, I'm getting excited. But because of that possibility of death, people took more chances. And then when war was over, they didn't want to go back because they saw their full potential as people, you know?
There's
liberty in that.
I want to come back to the filmmaking a bit because I could tell we could just keep going. I just want to talk about the filmmaking itself, just the cinema, just for a second. I know it's not as interesting to you as some of these other things, I can tell, but I love how you come back to the cityscapes. I also love, I will speak of the musical numbers in the piece too. It's rare to see a film. Yes, a round of applause for the musical numbers. It's rare to see a film where it's very tactile, the heaviness, the gravitas of the story we're telling. But at the same moment, we have to understand what's at stake, what's being lost. And I love both the scenes in the jazz clubs, especially the Café de Paris scene, which is incredible. But also getting to see Saoirse actually like cut a rug is just as incredible as well. Just talk to me about finding the balance between sort of the light and the dark in this film in a certain way. Well, or is it all dark to you, Mr. McQueen?
No, we do that. We do that. We humans do that. It doesn't matter if it's the darkest moment, we will always find joy. That's who we are. It's bizarre, but it's true. Is it bizarre? I think we think it's bizarre when we look on from the outside, but when we're on the inside, we will find joy. We will. And it's amazing. That's who we are. And again, how can I not show that? But also with music, that's what we did. We lulled ourselves with the music. We cradled ourselves with the music. We filled ourselves, drunk with joy with music because it was the thing that gave us a certain sense of, how can I say, of regaining a certain kind of control in an environment which was out of control. And it's so beautiful to move your body and dance, and that's what happened. It's kind of like Prince, party like it's 1999. Armageddon's coming, but guess what? I'm gonna go out rocking, baby. And that's what people did. So it's not like it's something which I'm just throwing it in there for like entertainment. It's part of who we are as human beings in war. Excuse me.
I love the casting of Elliot as George. One, I've been going back and forth to London a lot to work on Mufasa, mm-hmm. and there is the physical presentation of George. I'm trying to say this in the most delicate way. Is something I find quite present in London, in the UK. Someone who looks like George mm-hmm. in a certain way, and I was really impressed with you leaning into the ramifications of what it is like to be George. He is in some ways terrorized, antagonized throughout the film because his father is black, and because he's just a step removed from what is pure British. This kind of culminates in the end, and this is now me, I guess, in front of a public audience. I should probably ask you this in private, but after he's saved all these people, and I want to talk to you about the sequence in the underground with the flood, he saved all these people. He's in the room. The woman comes in, and I saw myself in George, where he hears the cops downstairs, and he's like, "Oh, where is he?" And right away he goes, "Oh, I'm black. They're here for me." He jumps out the window. Well, I thought that was so real. I'm bringing my own experience to it. You talk to me about it.
Well, if you notice in the movie, that's my little secret in the movie. The only people who see George are people of authority or black people. I've walked down the street being invisible often. Barry, you know what I'm talking about. So, if you notice, that's the only people who see George. Otherwise, people don't see him in the picture. And that was deliberate because that would have happened. You know what I mean? Again, it's this black boy who's dealing with him, who is a riffraff or whatever. So again, it's one of those. Again, I just lost my train of thought. But the rest of the question was just prompt me on what you just said. It was
just about when he saved everyone. He's a hero. Okay. The cop comes downstairs, and right away it just kicks in. He just knows I got to get the hell out of here. And I said, "Yes, George."
Yeah, exactly. That's the only people who see him is that authority or black people. That's it. That's they make their judgment.
I found that so very. I thought it was real, and I thought it was tragic at the same time. But I felt it was earned based on all the things that we see George go throughout the film. He could not suppress that reflex.
He can't, but also the fact he's learning as he goes along. as he goes along, he's not the George that left home. Is not the George he ends up at the end of the picture. You know, obviously the one of the poignant parts is the Punch and Judy show. All the kids are looking at the puppets. He's looking at the feet. The guy, the puppeteer. And it's difficult, to even for me to think about as such this poor boy, but he has to grow up in that situation. Again, as a black person, as a black child, you become political very, very quickly. You understand the question you have to ask yourself very quickly. I mean, me growing up, I was very lucky in a way. Lucky, I don't know, but I grew up in an environment of Greek, Turkish, Polish, French, Nigerian, Jamaican. I grew up in a really crazy school where everybody was there. And at the same time, you start thinking who, how, why, and what because of who you are and what people project onto you. So George is this beautiful boy. He's seeing that, but also he's seeing who we are within a time when we need to pull together. And sometimes we're not the best of people. And seeing war through a child's eyes, what I wanted to do is to have a situation where we could be sober. We could see ourselves and ask ourselves questions about the broader, wider world. What's going on out there? I mean, look what's going on outside these four walls. As an artist, I've never felt so. I never felt that I'm just very grateful that my work is out now at this time. There's a sobering. You could see war through a child's eyes and say, good and bad, right and wrong, what children do. When do we start to compromise? When do we start to look away? We could get back to a point where we can see this is nonsense. We have to have a situation where there has to be some kind of idea of who we are and to sort of clear a path for children. As a parent, that's what I want to do. I imagine most people here want to do that for kids or have no kids or you have kids, but for generations to come, we have to sober up. And I was very blessed that my movie opened, listen to the story. Let's not go there.
I mean, that could be a finisher. And I'll just say that watching the movie in the present moment and watching a child go through this experience, it was very, very prescient, very immediate. And I did wonder, what is George going to be like 6 months, 6 years, 12 years after the end of this film?
Well, I'm just happy that we have seen George, We have seen George and we see him. And hopefully through we seeing George, we see ourselves. That's as much as I can hope for.
There's so much spectacle in this piece that's different than I'd say the work you've done in your previous films. There's planes crashing, there's bombs, and then there's this epic flood. I want to ask you about that sequence, but I want to say first, I was shocked that the underground was being blocked off from the citizens even at this point in the war. I just found that I'm not British, so I didn't know that was the case. I was just like shocked. I wanted you to talk about the flood sequence, yes, but also talk about this detail of the underground literally not being provided initially as a shelter.
Well, you're not alone, Barry. A lot of British people do not know that the underground was closed. Basically, what it was apparently Churchill said he didn't want people to cower. That's why he closed the underground. What happened was there was people from the East End who fought in the Civil War in Spain and in Madrid when they were sheltering from Franco's bombs, knew about hiding in the underground. So when they came back, that's where they wanted to go. But it was closed because of Churchill. But people fought their way. Again, that's what I'm talking about, changing your narrative. Us together, people fought their way to get in underground. That's what happened. So you have these classical images of, say, Henry Moore, people is sheltering underground, these classical romantic images. They fought for that. They weren't given that, So again, these narratives have to come to the surface. So this romantic idea of the Blitz and the Blitz spirit, we fought for that. Again, I apologize. And so, the floods. Of course, it's set up all the way through the film is set up that the safest place to be is in the underground. So when this catastrophe happens, of course, even heightens the amount of anxiety hopefully the audience gets, because I've been laying the bed of the underground is the safest place to be. That actually happened. So that actually happened, and it was a 9-year-old boy who actually got somehow squeezed through the gates and saved the people in there. And there's still people, unfortunately, who are buried under there because they couldn't get everyone out. But that's just right. We've got one more question?
Yes, but I did want to say...
Technical stuff we'll talk about
There
later.
are people being so cruel to George in that moment.
No.
You could have made a choice. You did not. I just want to say you could have made a choice. George could have made a choice. I saw it very hopeful. He gets out. He does go back and save those people because spite had not taken hold of his heart. I love it. It never even occurred to you. It's beautiful. Never even occurred to him. I love it. All right. My last question is going to be, because I wanted to ask about...
Barry, man, you can't... No.
I wanted to ask about this. You've been on this journey, and you used the term when we started. You said, on the basis of who we are, or maybe it's because of who we are. And I feel like, were you speaking of Britons in a certain way? What I'm getting at is, between this and Small Acts, you've sort of taken this journey going back into British history and British history in a way that it reflects people of color, Black Britons, in this really interesting way, I find, between the two projects. I think they're kind of in conversation with one another, because we were talking about earlier how the images do not exist. They didn't until you've decided to use your capital to create them. Is that a conscious choice, moving from Small Acts? Small Acts is a series that Mr. McQueen made with Amazon. Yes, you guys all know. And now moving on to Blitz as well with Apple. Let me say, I shouted out the one, let me shout out the other with Apple, with Blitz. I see you. Is this a conscious choice to sort of maybe remind or fill out the quilt of who we are? Because these stories have not been told, Small Acts and Blitz now. And I think you're really adding to, if not the historical record, the visual historical record.
As a filmmaker, as a Black artist, I am interested in pushing the barrier in a way. I imagine lots of filmmakers are, lots of artists are, of course. I'm interested in revolution. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in revolution on this big screen because there's no other place for me to go. Look at me. Look at me. I don't have a choice. So to use the classical, to use the conventional, to do something completely different is where I'm at. Because I don't have a choice. I need these images on screen because they excite me. They thrill me. And I want to make a movie that everybody could go and see and be thrilled and excited by new images, new ideas, new understandings of our reality. Because lots of these things, what I've just shown you on Blitz, fell through the words in history books. But they're there. They're present. Ife is there. He existed. Rita is there. She existed. Those women making those bombs existed. Mickey existed. Those guys who decapitated people's fingers to take the jewelry off existed. The hoi polloi, the perversity of the hoi polloi in the Café de Paris, existed. It's, what, for me often, I said this before, but it's almost like, watching cowboys and Indian films, and then you realize that Native Americans aren't the bad guys. If we are not, as filmmakers, doing something for a broader audience and they could be entertained and excited and thrilled, but at the same time bringing them into something which they are a part of, then I don't want to be around. I need to be useful. And at this point in time in history, because of what's going on in the world, it couldn't be more, at least for me, it couldn't be more. I can't be more useful. I need to be useful. I'm an artist, but I have to be useful. Otherwise, what's the point?
It is Sunday at the DGA Theater. My man became a pastor because he was speaking and somebody said, existed. What was it? Used for existed. Somebody shouted out the rest of the word. We went to church. This is the Reverend Steve McQueen. I am Barry Jenkins. Thank you for coming to the screening of Blitz. Get home safe.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.